Well, hello there everyone, good evening and welcome to Inside Line Racing. My name of course is Alex Lilliart, giving you live, or bringing you live and uninterrupted coverage of the very wet qualifying session here, followed by the race session of course at round 12 here at the fantastic Hungarian, located of course in Hungary. I hope everyone had a very nice Christmas and New Year. It's nice to see these guys back doing what they do best, attempting to finish the race and not crash of course. Flexi then so far has taken provisional pole in these appalling conditions, something which I'm very familiar with, having just completed the ILR3 race in very similar conditions, and I'm still trying to catch my breath from actually being in sweat mode for the best part of an hour. And now it's time for these guys to do what they do best and tackle the very technical circuit here at Hungary, which I'll get into more details later on. Dougie Antonio has just taken provisional pole on a 1:30.8 on the intermediate tyres. Is that real? It is real. Okay then. So I was told that it was basically hissing down for the entirety of the qualifying session, but it looks like already some of the guys are braving it on the intermediate tyres, and it looks like it's the best bet to be on so far, because the fastest guy out there is on those Greenwald intermediate tyres. So don't be surprised if all the drivers out there at the moment on the wet tyres decide to quickly get back inside the pits and switch on to the intermediates. The weather forecast for the race, I've been told it's at least dry. If it's going to be dry throughout, or how dry it will be, will have to remain to be seen. As Flexi is going to go for another lap then, coming in second at 31.5. He fails to improve, and in fact he's about 2.5 seconds off the pace. So yeah, possibly then, it looks like that these guys here on the intermediate tyres are certainly on the best ones to be on so far. We've got 13 of the 20 drivers have set lap times, with our aero specialist, who is a reserve driver in the Toro Rosso tonight, and Harrin down at 20th in the Mercedes, have already retired from the session. Not too sure how they've managed to do that so far. But we've also got another reserve driver, Cohen, up in 5th place at the moment, partnering Larkin in the Ferrari team. And we're just watching Dougie Antonio here complete possibly another lap, where he might be coming back into the pits as well. So Flexi in second, Owen Wyatt for Sauber up into 3rd place at the moment, he's back in the pits. Fernard, who's had a fairly solid start to his life in ILR3, currently in 4th, and then we have both the Ferraris of Cohen and Larkin 5th and 6th. Rinky Marie in 7th place, Nigel, EFC Matthew and Wazzy completing the top 10. A handful of drivers still get to set lap times. Paul McGuinness, the slowest of those 13 that has set a lap time, 1:37.649, but we all know he can go a bit quicker than that. So good evening everyone that's tuned in for the live stream tonight. Good to have you all back, all the regulars back, and any new faces out there as well, do feel free to stick around. Of course we've got ILR4 running at the same time as ILR3 tonight on the channel, and then obviously on Sunday we have ILR1 and 2. The big boys take to this circuit. So we're watching TMB Wazzy come back into the pits then. Konzo still in the pit. Zenki on an outlap at the moment. Tough to Handle has managed to move up into 8th place. So whilst then looks like the track is fairly quiet, as most of the drivers out there at the moment will be coming back in to put on the intermediate tyres, gives me a bit of an opportunity to then to just refresh everyone's memory of how the drivers and the constructors standings, how they are at the moment after of course 11 races. We're now into the second half of the season, and it's quite nice to have that sort of midsummer break, if you like. Of course it was sort of forced upon us by Christmas and New Year, but it is essentially now the second half of the season. So Tough to Handle still leads away in this championship, and if I can bring up the right table so I don't have to keep scrolling between everything, but Tough to Handle has pretty much led this championship for the entirety of this season so far, but his form has been a bit hit and miss in the last few races, and those that are trying to close up on them, again, they can't really find major consistency themselves. So the Williams driver still leads the championship on 136 points, 22 ahead of the McLaren of Spaghetti Chips. Zenki has had a very, very good form as of late, with a string of excellent podium finishes. He's now into 3rd place with Red Bull on 85, and Flexi in the Force India in 4th on 80, just 1 point ahead of Konzo, Tough to Handle's teammate in the Williams, on 79. All the way at the bottom of the standings, of course, is Fernard in the Toro Rosso and no points, and Paul McGuinness in the Haas team now has 2 points to his name. The last 2 races he has managed to bring the car home in one piece relatively well, and picked up 2 10th places as well. So the terrible starts to the Scotsman season, hopefully he can now start to find a bit of form and get on a nice little bit of a run to score some more points as the season goes on. So Zenki then now on his flying lap. McGee Showman and Lukey Luke both also out on the pits. Spaghetti Chips has retired from the session. Not too sure if he's crashed or if he's just decided to end the session early, as EVR Matt just moving out of the way for his teammate Matthew there. So in the constructors then, Tough to Handle and Konzo for Williams of course lead away on 215 points, 49 points ahead of the McLaren team of Spaghetti Chips and Dougie Antonio. Red Bull in 3rd place, Rinky Marie and Zenki on 101, and then Joe Cole and Fernard for Toro Rosso in 4th place place on 92, and then Flexi and McGee's Showman, the Force India boys, in 5th place on 88. Just 2 points ahead of the Renault of Matt and the Ferrari team of Boogster and Larkin, but no Boogster here tonight, of course, so we've got Cohen as one of our many reserve drivers in ILR stepping in tonight to hopefully score some good points for the team. So let's have a look how things are going. Almost halfway through the session now. Dougie Antonio still on provisional pole. The only driver to dip into the 1 minute 30s with a 1 minute 30.898. In second place at the moment, EVR Matt for Renault Flexi has been pushed down to 3rd. And EVR Matt comes back into the pits. Owen White still in the pits. Fernand now up into 5th place. Needs to start scoring some points this season. Cohen and Larkin still in 6th and 7th. Tough to handle now on an outlap for the Williams in the intermediate tyres. I'm expecting most of these guys, to be honest, to be on the intermediates at some point. I'll leave it detail as best so we do see what these guys are doing. But of course it doesn't really matter what tyres you qualify on, because if it's wet in qualifying and dry in the race, then everyone all the way through the field from first all the way down to last will have a free choice of whatever tyres they want to start on. The compound tyres that we have here in dry conditions are the ultra soft, the soft and the medium. So we're missing out a compound, the super soft tyres. There's around about 1.2 to 1.3 seconds between the ultra soft and the soft, and then about 6 to 7 tenths of a second between the softs and the mediums. In the dry, I haven't had too much experience, so I'm not going to put my neck out there and say if it's a 1 or 2 stop race, but I'll be expecting most of the guys to be able to do the 1-stop race, maybe going mediums onto softs or softs onto mediums, but certainly being able to do the mediums onto something like the ultra softs as well, as long as of course they stay out of trouble and look after the tyre. But it'll be a bit of a guessing game going into the race. Of course, some of these guys at the top of the standings in qualifying may very well have decided to choose some sort of a semi-wet setup to get themselves towards the front of the field and then spend most of it defending in the race. With a setup that isn't really flattering to their style in the fully dry conditions. Of course, some guys out there that are further down the order might have a fully dry setup on, thinking to themselves, it doesn't really matter where I qualify, all the points and prizes of course handed out at the end of the race. This circuit is very tight, very technical. It requires a medium to high downforce setup, and there's only really 2 overtaking opportunities. We have 2 DRS zones here. Of course, they're not in effect in qualifying due to the wet conditions, but they are down the main straight and then on the exit of turn 1 all the way down to turn 2, just underneath the advertising hoarding. You can expect a majority of the overtakes done into the hairpin at turn 1, but don't be surprised to see a switchback or a cutback from the car behind going down into the inside of turn 2. They are both good overtaking opportunities. As for the rest of the lap, well, you're really going to have to pressurise the car ahead into a bit of a mistake if you're going to fight your way past. There is a couple of spots here, that is one of them at the chicane with Tough to Handle. He's made a bit of a mistake there, and that's pretty much his lap ruined, I feel. And also towards the end of the lap as well, after the sector 2 S's here, the left right, you've got a little short straight down to the tight right hander going into sector 3, which Tough to Handle is just about to negotiate. So just out of this corner, you've got a little bit of a straight here. If the car ahead of you gets a bit out of shape, you can stick a cheeky dive bomb up the inside. It has been done before by myself and others, and it can be a move that's pulled off. So there is a couple of other opportunities around the circuit that the drivers might be able to take advantage of, but in reality the only real overtaking opportunities are going to be into turn 1 and turn 2. So Dougie Antonio, with just over 5 minutes left of the session, still on provisional pole. Lap times are now starting to reduce as Tough to Handle does move up into second place with a 29.4, but still 8 tenths off of the McLaren's time. But we did see Tough to Handle make a bit of a mistake coming out of that chicane in sector 2. Larkin moves up into second place. Fernand is up into 4th. Rinky Marie in 5th. So these lap times, I think, will continue to change as the qualifying time runs down, because obviously we're now moving into sort of a light rain territory and moving away from heavy rain. The intermediate tyres are clearly the better or the best tyres to be on at the moment. I don't think we'll get any dry tyres. We might have someone being a bit brave towards the very end of a session, but I don't think we're going to see any quick lap times on the dry tyres. So if the track and weather conditions slowly continue to improve, as it looks like they're doing at the moment, we could see these lap times continue to tumble, and it could very well be last car across the line takes pole position here. But so far, Dougie Antonio still on provisional pole, as he has been all session. In EVR Matt then, we're now watching the Renault driver. He is the quickest on the wet tyres so far, with a 31.2, which wasn't a bad lap, to be honest. I think Dougie Antonio set a 30.8, so he's, the Renault driver certainly got pace. We'll jump on board with him then. Coming into sector 2, this is a very tricky corner. This, you want to make sure you stay off the inside curve, because the right rear tyre will grip that curb and spin the car around. The chicane as well, the sausage curb on both parts of the apex. Again, stay away from there. Now we're coming into the S's into sector 2, the left, right. The first part is okay, but I found personally I struggled through this left-hander here going into the right-hander as well. The car does want to come a bit unstable, certainly with these tricky conditions. You want to run too wide over the curb if you want to give it a nice berth, because you will lose time down that. Down this very short straight then, into the right-hander here as well, second or third gear, over to the right-hand side then, penultimate corner now. Bit off camber, you can get away with running a little wide through there and taking a late apex, straighten the car for the final corner, and EVR has decided to not complete this lap and has come back into the pits. He'll have enough time then to get back in and put on another set of intermediate tyres, as he absolutely completely ignores the fact that we do have a pit lane speed limiter here. And he'll be back in now. Quick change onto another set of intermediate tyres and then back out onto the circuit. McGee Showman then just bypassing the chicane there, making a little bit of a mistake. Looks like he's slowing down to allow the Williams driver through of, was it Konzo? No, it wasn't Konzo. It was Tough to Handle then. So our championship leader back out there, showing a little bit of netcode lag there. Hopefully that will calm down. We don't need that going down into turn 1 at the start of this race. So just over 2.5 minutes left of the session. Dougie Antonio still on provisional pole. Fernard now up into second place for Toro Rosso, and TMV Wazzy, the leading Sauber driver, in third. EFC Matthew 4th, Larkin 5th. Our championship leader Tough to Handle in 6th. Rinky Marie 7th. Luke Luke in 8th. Konzo in 9th, McGee Showman in 10th. We've lost 4 drivers from this session. Zenki, who's only in 15th place at the moment, Aero Specialist in 17th, and Spaghetti Chips and Harrin at the back of the field, who have yet to set a lap time. In fact, will be unable to set a lap time. So then, Tough to Handle across the line then. And he now eclipses Dougie Antonio, 28.272, his second lap on those tyres. Good enough now to take provisional pole. And Dougie, as you can see, just come back out on the circuit, moving out the way, allowing some drivers through that are just starting their quick laps at the moment. In fact, it's a bit of Piccadilly Circus at the moment, as the hard driver has to make his way through there. Paul McGuinness down in 18th place on the intermediate tyres. And just 1 minute and 45 seconds left. There's plenty of time for these guys to get out of the pits and get round. Tough to Handle there, just moving out of the way. His qualifying is done. He will not be able to improve, and he'll be on to the likes of Wazzy, who's now moved up into second place. Dougie Antonio, EFC Matthew, Fernard, maybe a few others as well that might be able to spring a surprise, because the track conditions clearly ever improving here as this session goes on. And if Tough to Handle not taking further part, he's obviously done his flying lap a minute ago, and he doesn't have enough fuel or ERS battery left to go for another one. So I think his 28.2 is in danger here, certainly from the likes of Dougie. He's only got improved by 4/10, half a second, and he will retake that provisional pole. But watch out for the likes of EFC Matthew, Wazzy, and also some of these guys down here as well on the wet tyres. Well, they're not on the wet tyres, they're on the intermediates now. It's going to be interesting to see if they can move up the order as well. Flexi in 13th, I'll be expecting him to creep up the order. We've got yellow flags coming into sector 3. That's just a slow Ferrari there. Flexi also coming around, just weaving left to right a little bit, trying to get a bit of extra tyre temperature into those intermediate tyres. His teammate McGee Showman just behind him a few seconds as well. So 35 seconds left of the session. A lot of cars out there. Every single driver that hasn't retired from this session is out on circuit at the moment. Tough to Handle, the only one that's in the pits. His qualifying is over. So Flexi comes across the line. Owen Wyatt now just again weaving left to right, trying to find himself a bit of track space. He's got a Toro Rosso behind him, and that won't be too good. So Owen Wyatt then has already been a bit compromised going into the final corner. Rinky Marie moves up into provisional pole, a 28.194. It's going to be difficult really to jump on board of any of these drivers, because any one of these could really take pole position here. I feel Dougie is probably best placed driver for that. Konzo has moved up into third place, and his qualifying session is now over, so it's a Williams 2-3 at the moment, with a Red Bull on the very front row of the grid. And Dougie Antonio event now in sector 2. Anyone else close by? Where's Wazzy and all this? He's still further back in the lap, so Dougie, I think, is going to be the top man closest to the line at the moment. Where's Flexi? We know he's quick. He's in sector 2 as well. Wazzy's retired from the session. He cannot improve from his 4th place then. So we'll come back to Dougie. Where is he? He's in sector 3 now. Just a couple of more corners to go then. He's got a hard car ahead of him, but there's enough gap between the two cars that it won't affect his downforce. down into 7th place now because Cohen has moved up into 4th place. The Mercedes of Nigel has moved up to 5th, but here comes Dougie. A 28.194 is the lap time to beat, and it's a 28.106, but I think he's no, sorry, it's a 28.689. Not too sure it brought up a 28.106. So Dougie has completed the session, and I don't know if he's improved or not. I think he might have had an invalidation. Flexi then does take provisional pole, who was another driver to keep a hold of. Larkin in 2nd place. Rinky Marie is still going. He's just finished actually in 2nd place. So Flexi, the only driver to get into the 1:27. We've got Owen White coming across the line. His session is over. It's just Lukey Luke that's left, and I think he might have just got himself inside the top 10. So a very interesting grid coming into this race. So there we go. Flexi has taken pole position by just over 0.3 of a second from Funard, who's managed to get himself up onto the front row for Toro Rosso. Rinky Marie in 3rd place, Larkin in 4th, and then the Williams boys on row 3, tough to handle ahead of Konzo. Cohen in the 2nd, Ferrari in 7th place, Nigel in 8th, Wazzy 9th, Lukey Luke in 10th, but I think Lukey Luke has a 5-place grid penalty for something. EFC Matthew in 11th, and Paul McGuinness, Dougie Antonio all the way down in 13th. McGee Showman, EVR Matt, Owen White, Zenki, Aero Specialist, and then 2 drivers who failed to set a lap time, Spaghetti Chips and the Mercedes of Harrin. I'm going to take a quick break here, but do stay tuned and I'll be back with you guys during the formation lap. So and Flexi leads the field round there. We've got a sort of an upside down grid a little bit. We've got a few drivers that are slightly out of position. Fernard obviously up into 2nd place. Rinky Marie in 3rd. Larkin in 4th. Our championship leader, tough to handle, down in 5th place. Some other quick guys. Dougie Antonio down in 13th. Spaghetti Chips down in 19th as well. Zenki in 17th. So it'll be interesting to see how they all get on during this race. So we'll bring up the tyres then. Now, obviously, in F1 rules, the tyres, if you qualify inside the top 10, the tyres you use to set your best lap time, you have to start the race. But of course, with it being a wet qualifying session and a dry race, that rule no longer applies, which means all these drivers are allowed to put on a fresh set of whatever they want. And it looks like that a majority of the field have gone for the soft tyres. Rinky Marie in 3rd, Nigel in 8th, and Harrin in 20th have all gone for the medium compound tyres. So this is going to be a bit of a nice little 15-16 lap sprint, I think, to the first round of pit stops for a majority of these guys on the soft tyres. All the field very close together. So we'll bring up the position changing as we just wait for all of these guys to take up their position on the grid. It's been a few weeks since we've been racing in inside line racing. Christmas and New Year festivities are all over and done with, and now it's time for these guys to really focus on what they need to do. So it's Fernard and Flexi on the front row. 5 lights here at Hungary, and the race is go, and away they go now. Looks like one of the Williams, just a bit of a laggy start there, but it looks like all the field are away quite nicely. And Fernand already moving into the lead, so Flexi down into second place, and Rinky Marie up the inside as well, might push him down into third. We've got that Williams still bouncing around in the background. Hopefully he doesn't get in the way of anyone, but it's the Toro Rosso Fernand who leads the field away. Rinky Marie, good start up to second place, and Flexi, all of his hard work undone, down into third place, and Tough to Handle's car is bouncing around all over the show. Hopefully that calms down and doesn't cause an incident. I'm getting dizzy just watching him, so we'll move away and focus on someone else. Dougie Antonio yet again making one of his blistering starts, up 6 positions into 7th place. Bits of carbon fibre dancing all around the exit of turn 4, so a few people are already struggling with a bit of front end downforce, having knocked their front wing as we come through the rest of the field into the chicane here with all of these guys down in the midfield. Looks like they've all kept it relatively clean. We've got Hungarian and Spaghetti Chips going into battle for 16th and 17th. These guys will sort themselves out eventually, and it'll be one-way traffic and the whole line of cars all the way down for the first couple of laps, because there's not a lot of opportunity to overtake here. And it's Aero Specialist that's dropped to the back of the field. So we've got one Toro Rosso at the front, one at the back. But it's Fernand that completes lap 1 in the lead. Rinky Marie in second place. Flexi in third. Tough to Handle, our championship leader, is still dancing all around. I think he's still a bit drunk from the festivities over Christmas and New Year. Wazzy in 5th place. Konzo in 6th. Now up behind the Sauber driver. Fernand, of course, sets the fastest lap. He's the first car across the line. And will Konzo think about a move into turn 1? Wazzy defends the inside. And Dougie Antonio, very feisty as usual, we can usually expect from the McLaren driver. He'll be looking for a way past Cohen in 8th place. He's got Nigel behind him. So that Mercedes is the meat in that red Ferrari sandwich, which is something we usually see in real life F1, and we're seeing it here for ILR. 8th, 9th and 10th for those. Paul McGuinness has made one position up. He's in 11th on the fringes of yet another championship point. McGee Showman in 12th. Oh, just running a little wide. Very twitchy there over the curbs. Managed to correct and control that Force India. Remains in 12th place ahead of Owen White in 13th. EVR Matt in 14th. Zenki in 15th. Harry and Spaghetti Chips. They've made up a couple of positions. Lukey Luke all the way down in 18th place. Aero Specialist and EFC Matthews made a pit stop. I believe he's 23.5 seconds back from the field. So he's obviously he was obviously the one that damaged that front wing here at the exit of turn 4, and he's had to pit at the end of lap 1, and that would have severely compromised his race and strategy. But it's Fernand that leads. Flexi now up into second place, so he's managed to pass the Red Bull of Rinky Marie. I've missed it, but Flexi now up into second place. Rinky Marie down to third. Tough to Handle still dancing around the screen in 4th, but he's got a bit of a gap, a 2-second gap back to Wazzy in 5th place. He's now got Dougie Antonio, Konzo and Cohen all behind him. So Konzo has lost a position. Race control lets us know that DRS has now been enabled to drag reduction system, and Dougie with a very brave and bold dive bomb into turn 1, but Wazzy very aware of it, gives him the space and better traction and exit out of turn 1 as well. Dougie might think about it into turn 2 as well, but Wazzy driving that car just the way he needs to. Now Alfa Romeo Sauber has got a fat ass on it, and he's going to park that in the middle of a track for as long as he needs to. He knows that Dougie's a quicker driver, but he's fighting for race and points all for himself. Dougie needs to get past the Sauber driver as quickly as possible. He does have an outside chance of challenging for the title, and he's made a fantastic start, up 7 positions. He's our biggest mover in this race, along with Wazzy, who's moved up 4. Same for his teammate Owen White as well. So both the Sauber drivers have made progressive starts in this race. Konzo has lost 1 position, as has coming down into 8th. Larkin, big loser, lost 5 positions from 4th all the way down to 9th, and Nigel's lost a couple of positions as well, remaining in 10th just ahead of Paul McGuinness. Further down, the rest of his guys still very close together, and Spaghetti Chips currently running in 2nd place in the championship. He doesn't want to be down in 16th though. He's going to find the going tough. A majority of these cars are on the same type of tyre strategy, so if he wants to get past these guys, he's going to have to do it on track, on board with the McLaren driver, as Harrin takes a more of a cute line through the final corner. Wide entry, tight exit, gets the power down earlier. They're all getting DRS, as you can see. A couple of cars in the pits as well further back. Late move up the inside from Spaghetti Chips. Harrin does see him. An Aero Specialist and EVR Matt in the pits, and Aero Specialist picks up a 5-second stop-go penalty for speeding in the pit lane as well. Tricky pit lane here. The entrance, you can put a wheel on the grass and spin the car halfway round, and also the pit lane limiter line, if you like, is almost unsighted. It really does jump up upon you, so don't be surprised if we see more guys speeding as they come into the pits. So both the Renault drivers and Aero then having to make early pit stops here to fix damage on their car, and it's not been a good evening so far for both the Mats. But Fernand still leads. half a second ahead of Flexi. He's now dropped Rinky Marie in 3rd place and has the Williams of Tough to Handle behind him. And all these four still pulling away from the Wazzy train, 5th place at the moment. You can see there Dougie and Tony all over the back of him like a cheap suit. Might try and move down into the right hand. I've said this is one of the very few overtaking opportunities outside of the 2 DRS zones. And Wazzy defends the inside. He'll have the inside as well. We're set into last corner. Puff of smoke from the left front there as he locks up. And Dougie's still there, might think about it into the final corner. This will be a very impressive move coming into the DRS zone as well. And Dougie does make that move stick into the final corner. He will have DRS as well. Wazzy will be able to pick up a bit of a toe, but he's got to watch out for Konzo in the Williams, who's already up the inside then. So Wazzy is in danger of losing 2 positions in 2 corners. And Konzo again just locks up the right front a little bit, but he manages to make the move stick as well. So Wazzy then losing out to Dougie going into the final corner, and then losing out to Konzo going into the first corner. And now he's got to look out behind him as well, because both the Ferraris are looking very feisty. They've managed to get past Nigel, so he's got still very close together, as you can see. On board with Nigel there. You can even see Dougie in 5th place up the road. That's how close these guys inside the top 10 are. Paul McGuinness in 11th place. He's got a handful of cars behind him as well. I mean, Wyatt is there just a few tenths back, as is McGee Showman in the Force India, Zenki as well, Spaghetti Chips, Harin. They're all starting, these guys in 14th, 15th and 16th, all starting to slowly creep up and make their way through the field. That's a Red Bull off the circuit though. That's Zenki. He's had an instant somewhere, spinning the car around 360, damaging the front wing as well. I'm not too sure if he lost it on the exit of the chicane and hit the curb and spun the rears up, or if he's had contact with someone, but Zenki has thrown in the towel early on here on lap 5, and he becomes our first retirement of the race. So unfortunately that podium streak has ended, and he immediately leaves the session as well in sheer disappointment and frustration. But Fernard won't care. Into lap 6, holding on to this lead, just 7 tenths ahead of Flexi. Both these guys setting very consistent lap times at the moment. Just see there on the stops, both the Renaults and Aero Specialists, of course, making early pit stops here. EFC Matthew and Aero have gone for the medium tyres. Hopefully they can take them to the end. That will be the plan. EVR Matt gone for another set of soft tyres. Meanwhile, further back we've got Cohen and Nigel battling over 9th and 10th. And it looks like it's being settled in the Ferrari's favour. Be a good opportunity to see what Cohen is like, a reserve driver in ILR3. So far he's keeping his nose clean, qualified and consistently racing inside the top 10, which is good to see. And he's just up behind his teammate Larkin at the moment. He's dropped off Wazzy a little bit, so I think Wazzy's was spooked a little bit by Dougie Antonio and Konzo getting past. And he's now managed to settle down into somewhat of a rhythm and keeping pace with the 2 cars ahead of him. But it'll be interesting to see if Dougie can slowly start to close this gap to Rinky Marie and Tough to Handle ahead in 3rd and 4th, and also bring Konzo along with him. Fernard and Flexi sort of checked out at the moment at the front, even though the gap between them has never grown to more than a second, and Rinky Marie only a second back as well, as Tough to Handle has given us that horrible over-revving glitch. You would have thought Codemasters would have fixed that by now. But nevertheless, Rinky Marie still in 3rd place, Tough to Handle still remaining in 4th. Dougie 5th, Konzo 6th, Wazzy 7th. We've got Maggie, Showman and Paul McGuinness. Paul McGuinness is losing positions actually. He's been running all this race in 11th place, and already he's down into 14th in the blink of an eye. And he's also got Harin and his own teammate challenging as well. Harin up the inside into turn 2. I think there might have been a little bit of a contact there. Paul McGuinness has been pushed a little wide. Harin will try this around the outside. Paul McGuinness chops across the front wing of that Mercedes car and holds on to 14th at the moment. But Paul McGuinness was looking fairly comfortable at the start, just outside of the top 10. But for whatever reason now finds himself down in 14th place, with Harin and Lukey Luke, the only 2 cars really challenging him at the moment. It's the Sauber there of Owen White, bounces aggressively over the curb. Spaghetti Chips now into 12th place, so he needs to get past Owen as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and then catch up to this train of cars behind Wazzy. So Spaghetti Chips, I'm not too sure what happened in qualifying, but he was retired very early. I can only assume he crashed, as Aero Specialist picks up a 3-second time penalty for exceeding track limits one too many times. And Spaghetti Chips up the inside of Owen White into the penultimate corner. Might have given him a bit of a love tap there, NASCAR style, just nudging the car ahead wide into the corner. And Spaghetti Chips up now into 11th place. Meanwhile, further back, McGee Showman might try and move into turn 1 on the Sauber driver. He's thinking about it up the inside. And Owen White will have to be very aware of him, because Owen's trying to get past or retake Spaghetti Chips. The Sauber driver does give McGee's Showman the respect and the space. And Owen holds on to that 12th place for now. Meanwhile, further back, Harrin has now managed to get past Paul McGuinness. And Paul McGuinness is also losing out to his own teammate here. Both the Haas cars fighting aggressively over 15th and 16th, which is one position, a couple of positions they really do want to find themselves in. Into lap 8 of 39. Still a handful of laps to go then before we start seeing some true pit stops happening with these guys. Fernard still leads 8 tenths ahead of Flexi. Winky Marie and Tough to Handle have now joined this battle. So this quartet comfortably leading the way here and consistently pulling away from Dougie and Konzo. You just saw in the background there. They're in 5th and 6th. Wazzy in 7th. The Ferraris of Larkin and Curran 8th and 9th. And Nigel rounds out the top 10. So plenty of action all the way through the field. Oh, and there's a spin there. I just caught the back of that. McGee's Showman has been put into a spin. I'm not too sure if he made contact. Just watching a bit of a replay. No, he lost it all by himself. Yeah, the advantage of running the stream alongside me on my laptop with about a 10-second delay means I can instantly have a bit of an instant replay. Looks like there that McGee's Showman just did catch the inside curb at turn 5. Spun up the rear tyres and spun that car around, and he'll be disappointed with himself, dropping himself all the way down into 16th place. Meanwhile, at the front, as we come into double-digit lap times, lap 10 of 35, Fernard still leads very comfortably as well, with Flexi in 2nd, and EVR Matt, I believe, has probably called it a day down in 19th place, as Dougie Antonio is the first driver to make a pit stop then. So he's going to be making a pit stop onto the medium tyres, unless he's feeling a bit brave or stupid. And indeed, going onto the medium tyres. McGee's Showman obviously coming into the pits as well. He would have absolutely destroyed those rear tyres on that spin on lap 9. But Fernard leads. Flexi in 2nd, Rinky Marie in 3rd, Tough to Handle in 4th place. These four very consistent with their lap times, as Matt's Renault fortunately ghosted on the side of the circuit there, so it looks like he has just pulled over and thrown in the towel. So we're down to 18 of the 20 drivers that started this race. Still a good number of drivers still running. ILR3 did start pre-season and the first few races of the season a bit crash-tastic, starting races with 18 or 19 drivers and having less than 10 finishing, but since around about round 5 or 6 they have calmed down somewhat. All these drivers are now starting to know what each other driver's about, their strengths and weaknesses, how they attack and defend corners, their overall driving style, and it's always difficult in the first few rounds of any new season, especially in ILR, to really work out what everyone's about. But by the time you get about 5 or 6 rounds in, you can usually work out for yourself what everyone is like, and then the racing calms down a bit, or the contact calms down a little bit, and you get more wheel-to-wheel racing. But these top 4 then, very quick class of the field at the moment. Konzo 5 seconds back. He's now been promoted into 5th place because Dougie has made his first pit stop, his first and hopefully only pit stop, rejoining in 15th place in a bit of clear air on a fresh set of medium tyres, as Konzo just locks up the left front going into turn 2. Wazzy now up into 6th place, but he's still got both the Ferraris and Nigel behind him, 7th, 8th and 9th, as Flexi picks up a 3-second time penalty for exceeding one too many track limits. So Wazzy still in 6th place ahead of the Ferraris of Larkin and Curran. Nigel still there in 9th. Spaghetti slowly closing in on them. You can now see them, and I always find it, once you see the car you're catching ahead of you, it's always easier to focus on what you're doing, and you can see the strengths and weaknesses of the car in front, the parts of the circuit you're gaining and parts of the circuit you're losing on. You can modify and adapt your driving style as well to close that gap a bit more, and Spaghetti Chips now can see a handful of points ahead of him. But Tough to Handle in 4th, Flexi running in 2nd place as well. You'll be losing out in the championship battle. Still a long way to go. 8 or 9 races left, something like that after it. So still a couple of hundred worth of points still up for grabs for these guys. But even at this stage, with it being uber competitive in ILR3 as it traditionally is, every point does matter. It looks like Rinky Marie and Flexi going into battle over second and third. In fact, we're not in battle anymore. Rinky Marie has completed that move, probably down into turn 1, considering that Rinky Marie had DRS and Flexi did not. So the Red Bull driver then, on their medium tyres. So that is an interesting one. Obviously at this stage the soft tyres starting to burn up a little bit. Tyre temperature starting to rise a little bit. Tyre wear starting to go up as well. And this is the point of the race now where the medium tyres will start to be the more dominant of the two tyres. Dougie Antonio has proven that by setting the new fastest lap of the race, or 1 minute, whatever the hell it was, I did miss it. So Rinky Marie then, now into second place, but he's 1.7 seconds back from Fernand. So Flexi's obviously losing time now on these soft tyres, and don't be surprised to see that Force India in at the end of this lap or next. But Fernand's still very consistent in the front, at the front I should say. Dougie Antonio 3 seconds back from Owen Wyatt, so he hasn't closed too much this lap. But he'll be grateful for the fact that he has got some clear air. Flexi and Tough to Handle do continue on. Konzo is also going to carry on as well. Now, if these guys further back, do any of these decide to jump into pits? No, they're all going to carry on. So we'll jump on board with the 5 driver of Larkin. He'll get DRS. But he is way far back to try anything into turn 1. Meanwhile, Tough to Handle and Flexi are fighting over 3rd position on the exit of turn 1. I keep missing the big moves, I do apologise. But Flexi then looks like he's struggling now on them soft tyres a little bit. Rinky Marie on the mediums, and now Tough to Handle on the same set of soft tyres. Have managed to get past in the last couple of laps. So 1 minute 19.987 from Dougie Antonio. Into the 119s already. And he's now closed up quite a lot. 3 seconds down to 1.3. And Lukey Luke, you've got yellow flags in sector 1. Lukey Luke has been off the circuit. And he's spinning round. He's pirouetting. He's giving us a bit of a few donut display with a damaged front wing there. So I'm not too sure if he's made contact with someone or all by himself. And with Paul McGuinness off the pace. And now Lukey Luke struggling round with a damaged front wing. It's not been a good evening for the Haas team. Meanwhile, Flexi and Tough to Handle are still fighting over 3rd and 4th. Tough to Handle still holding on to that 3rd place. Fernand carries on for another lap. In fact, all of his top 4 don't. In fact, no, Flexi is deciding he's going to try the undercut here. As he comes into the pits, will he speed? There's the line. No, looks like he's okay. Indeed he is. So Flexi then, the first of the big boys at the front of the field. Now coming into the pits to put on a set of medium tyres. Is he having a front wing change? Don't think so. Front wing looks fine. Straight back out for number 4 for the Force India. Where's he going to rejoin? Larkin's in the pits. Harrin's coming across the line. So I think Flexi might come out behind Harrin. Where's Dougie Antonio in all this? I think Flexi will rejoin comfortably in front. Indeed he is. There's Flexi going down into turn 1 now. So Dougie on the medium tyres. He was about 3 to 3.5 seconds back from Flexi. The gap is now 2.5 seconds. So Dougie hasn't made the progress I would have expected him to do, having pitted several laps ago on the medium tyres. Now, of course, we've got to wait to see if our leaders do decide to pit as well. Fernand still carrying on, 2.1 ahead of Rinky Marie, who in turn is 1.3 ahead of Tough to Handle. So the top 3 now fairly evenly separated, so they can focus on their own race. I wouldn't be surprised if either Fernand or Tough to Handle decide to pit at the end of this lap. Does the Toro Rosso driver pit? No, he's carrying on. He feels comfortable. Rinky Marie will definitely carry on. And Tough to Handle will carry on as well. So maybe Flexi's just burning up those soft tyres at a quicker rate from the rest of his guys. He was certainly losing positions and lap time in the last couple of laps. As Nigel and Cohen are fighting over 6 and 7. In fact, there is a change of position as Wazzy ahead down to the left hand side comes into the pits, as does Spaghetti Chips in 8th place as well. So a few more drivers on these soft tyres choosing this lap to make their pit stops. Nigel now up into 5th place, Cohen up into 6th, Harrin up into 7th place. He'll be going as long as possible, of course, on the medium tyres. Flexi and Dougie Antonio also moving up the order. They would have been able to get past these guys. And Wesley, Spaghetti Chips both coming back out the pits. Where's Larkin in all this? I think he's going to get a jump on Spaghetti Chips, or stay ahead of the McLaren driver at least. So Wazzy and Larkin remain ahead of Spaghetti Chips. EFC Matthew now up to 13th place, but he may very well have to stop again He's out of sync with all of his drivers after pitting at the end of lap 1 or 2 for a new front wing. Owen White has made his pit stop. Paul McGuinness has as well, out in 16th, make that 17th place as McGinn Showman has managed to get past around the outside into turn 1. So fortunately for the Haas team, they won't thank me for calling them out. They are currently last and second last. Paul McGuinness in 17th, Lukey Luke in 18th. And Fernand, our race leader, chooses lap 15 as a time for him to get serviced by his mechanics. Don't speed, you'll throw it all away. And indeed he doesn't. Rinky Marie will therefore take over the lead of this race, going long on their medium tyres, which is to be expected. Tough to handle, pitting in from third place as well. Konzo will of course go on. He don't want to lose any time pitting behind his teammate. Now Fernand should rejoin comfortably in the lead, but it's going to be close between Flexi and Tough to Handle. Where is Flexi in all of this? He's just only coming out the final corner now, and Tough to Handle is just about to take the limiter off. So it's going to be close actually between the Williams and the Force India driver. I think Flexi may very well do it. He is indeed. Tough to Handle is going to have to yield going into turn 1. So Flexi has managed to retake that position ahead of the Williams driver, and there is Dougie Antonio, who's ever decreasing that gap to these two, but of course he's been on their medium tyres 6 laps already, so that might be a disadvantage for him in the later part of this race. So the position's sort of upside down at the moment as the round of stops for those on the soft tyres are now starting. We're just waiting for Cohen and Konzo running in 4th and 2nd place to make their pit stops. And then of course we'll be waiting for the guys that started on the medium tyres, Rinky Marie, Nigel and Harin, to make their first pit stops, as Larkin in 11th place picks up a time penalty for exceeding track limits. Just negotiating the chicane in Sector 2 behind Wazzy and ahead of Spaghetti Chips. So Konzo and Cohen, I reckon one of them, if not both, will be in at the end of this lap. Indeed, Konzo is peeling off to the right hand side. Will Cohen in the Ferrari decide to pit as well? He does indeed. So all of those that started on the soft tyres have now completed that stint. And he's very patient coming into the pit lane. I'd rather lose a second then gain a 5-second penalty. Flexi sets the new fastest lap of the race, and she's now up behind Harin, going long on their medium tyres. So Rinky Marie still holding on to this lead, 11.7 seconds ahead of Nigel. Of course, both the top two yet to make a pit stop. Fernand, in essence, is our race leader, as Flexi makes the move up the inside of Harin going into turn 2. The Mercedes driver puts up no resistance whatsoever. Harin is in his own race. No point losing time or bits of bodywork to the guys that are already about 20 seconds theoretically up the road for you. And let's put a bit of distance between Flexi and Tough to Handle, as he's still circulating around in 6th place. Dougie Antonio has now closed that gap. Less than a second now behind our championship leader. Konzo has rejoined several seconds behind. Konzo and Dougie Antonio were together in the early stages of this race. So obviously Dougie pitting early onto the medium tyres. The undercut has worked well, and he's almost 6 seconds ahead of Konzo now. But there is a 7-lap difference in tyre wear between the guys in 7th and 8th. Wazzy has rejoined in 9th, Larkin in 10th place as well. EFC Matthew down in 13th, Aero Specialist in 15th for being on those medium tyres for quite a while, having pitted at the very beginning of this race. So we're just waiting for Rinky Marie and Nigel and Harin to make their pit stops off of the medium tyres onto the quicker soft tyres. That'll hand the lead back to Fernand. 2nd place should be Flexi, and then it'll be well, flip a coin and see what happens where Rinky Marie will rejoin. It'll be somewhere around the likes of Tough to Handle, Dougie Antonio and well, not Konzo is too far back, but yeah, Fernand will be our race leader. Flexi will be 2nd, and it'll be a battle for 3rd, 4th and 5th between Rinky Marie, Tough to Handle and Dougie Antonio. But do keep an eye of course on Rinky Marie and Nigel. We may be able to pull out a couple of good moves towards the end of this race, being on the quicker, fresher, faster, soft tyres. 17 laps completed in lap 18 of 35, almost half distance now. And after the tricky conditions in qualifying, which was very entertaining, starting on the wet tyres, going on to the intermediate, seeing the timing screens consistently light up, giving us a bit of a slightly upside down grid, has given the likes of Spaghetti Chips a bit of a headache as he's slowly trying to make his way through the field. Still not even inside the top 10 at half distance as Rinky Marie carries on for another lap. Nigel 2nd place, 3.5 seconds ahead of Fernand. Flexi just over a second behind, having now dropped Harin. And Tough to Handle in 6th place. Has now got Dougie Antonio slowly catching him as well. Konzo in 8th, Wazzy 9th, Larkin 10th, and there is the McLaren of Spaghetti Chips We might be thinking about a move going down into turn 1, if not turn 2, but it would depend if Larkin's managed to get DRS off the back of Wazzy. I don't think so. I think he's too far back. Indeed he is. Larkin too far back from Wazzy to pick up a bit of a DRS boost, and it's going to be a good opportunity for Spaghetti Chips up the inside into turn 1. Late of the late breakers. Larkin gives him the space. Spaghetti Chips exits turn 1 with the DRS on the run down to turn 2 as well to put a bit of a gap ahead of the Ferrari driver ahead. And finally, Spaghetti Chips now realistically inside the points. His next target will be the Sauber driver of Wazzy. So on board is tough to handle. It makes a bit of a mess there of turn 1. Very deep. Running a bit wide as well. Losing time to Hungarian ahead. And tough to handle. I want to get past that Mercedes driver as quickly as possible. But going deep into turn 1 like that isn't going to help your cause. And I might give Dougie a bit of an opportunity to close up as well. Lukey Luke has just set the fastest lap and then immediately leaves the session. So I can assume he's done one or two things. Either disconnected or he's run out of patience and decided to leave the session, running down in 18th place. But as it stands, Rinky Marie still leading this race, now almost 13 seconds ahead of Nigel. Both of these drivers still yet to make their pit stop. So Fernand in 3rd place, Flexi in 4th, still slowly catching up to Nigel ahead. And we've got Harry in 5th place with Tough to Handle and Dougie Antonio slowly closing up. Conzo's brought the gap down from 6 seconds down to 4. As Owen Wyatt, running in 14th place, picks up a 3-second time penalty. I don't think that will change too much to his disappointing race so far. His teammate still running well, up in 9th place, as both of our guys who started on the medium tyres, Rinky Marie and Nigel, now choosing this lap to make a pit stop and going on to the soft tyres. So Fernand retakes the lead, and there is Rinky Marie coming out the pits, and that's going to be a sight of sore eyes for Tough to Handle. He's now got to get past this guy on the soft tyres. He's got to do it as quickly as possible whilst Rinky Marie still battles to get the temperatures up on these soft tyres. Give it half a lap and the Red Bull driver will be gone into the distance. We've got yellow flags in sector 3 as the Renault, the second Renault of EFC Matthew, calls it a day. But can our championship leader get past Rinky Marie in the next couple of corners? Because if not, that Red Bull is going to disappear into the distance. I don't think he's going to do it. I think he's lost all opportunity to do so, and you can see there that Rinky Marie already slowly starting to put a bit of a gap out. His next target is Harry in 3rd place, but he's going to be pitting in the next lap or two. So Rinky Marie now looking at a 3rd place, and he's only a few seconds away from Flexi and Fernand. So Rinky Marie running in 4th place at the moment does have a realistic chance of picking up the race win here, but he needs to get past this Mercedes driver as quickly as possible. Be hoping and praying that Harry chooses this lap to make his pit stop, and indeed he does, moving over to the right hand side. So Rinky Marie will breathe a massive sigh of relief. He'll pick up the DRS as well, and he'll be able to still pull away. You can see the exit he's got coming out the final corner compared to Tough to Handle back in 4th place. Dougie over a second back in 5th at the moment. So Rinky Marie then now up into 3rd place, 3.1 seconds behind Flexi. So we'll keep an eye on that gap in the next few laps. Nigel then now down into 10th place as his teammate has been bumped outside the top 10. Meanwhile, Wazzy and Spaghetti Chips are going into a nice little battle on the exit of 1 down into 2. The McLaren driver up the inside. Wazzy looking up the left front, dragging that car to the middle of a circuit. A little bit of wheel rubbing there, no harm, no foul. Now into turn 3, and I think Spaghetti Chips has had to take avoiding action, coming very dangerously back onto the circuit there, almost blindsiding poor Wazzy off to the side of a circuit, and both these guys side by side into turn 4. We'll jump on board with the McLaren driver. How they didn't end up in an almighty accident there at various points, I remain to be amazed. But Wazzy doing everything he can to defend that 7th place from Spaghetti Chips. And you've got Larkin looking on in 9th, hoping and praying these two take each other out so he can be gifted that 7th place. Nigel, after his pit stop onto the soft tyres, is a couple of seconds back in 10th. So he's going to be challenging these guys for a few more points as the race goes on, just running wide there, coming through turn 11. So Nigel's got an opportunity to maybe steal 7th place here, and Rinky Marie got 2 seconds between himself and Flexi. And Rinky Marie immediately sets a new fastest lap, 1 minute 18.782. So Rinky Marie then has had a very troublesome season so far compared to his teammate. He'll be hoping and praying that he can keep this performance up in this race. He's got a fantastic opportunity to score a race win here, as Larkin and Spaghetti Chips and Wazzy have been duking it out here for 7th, 8th and 9th. And Larkin's managed to get past a pair of them. Here comes Spaghetti Chips up the inside into turn 2. So Larkin's managed to get past both of them. Spaghetti Chips has remained in 8th place, even though he's managed to get past Wazzy. And both these guys now side by side running up to the hill. McLaren driver has the inside. He's squeezed the Ferrari driver out. And Spaghetti Chips now up into 7th place. But slowly but surely the McLaren driver is creeping himself back up the order. Now finds himself in 7th on 6 handy points. But he's 6.7 seconds back from this man Konzo, who's on his own at the moment. Same for Dougie, and tough to handle. All these guys a couple of seconds apart. There's a disconnected car of Lukey Luke just ahead there, so we won't need to pay attention to that. But Rinky Marie then, now less than a second away from Flexi. He'll have the DRS, you heard a beep in the air, finger on the button. And the Red Bull driver then has 12 laps, including the one these guys have just started. There's Fernand ahead going into turn 1. This is Flexi, so Rinky Marie can see the race leader. He can see a race win. Considering that his teammate Zenki crashed out early, but is sitting in 3rd place in the championship on a very healthy 85 points. Rinky Marie all the way down in 17th on just 6. And his very troublesome, difficult, crash-happy season may about to be completely turned around as we start the second half after an extended Christmas and New Year break. And Rinky Marie, he needs to keep this together. He needs to remain focused, and he needs to remain patient as well. As soon as he gets past Flexi, he'll have closed that gap to Fernand within a couple of laps. But he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to risk a dangerous move. He needs to rush it. He needs to get past at the first opportunity and not allow Flexi to feel comfortable ahead of the Red Bull driver. Any opportunity he gets, he's got to go for it. But it's got to be a safe one. You can't risk a dive bomb up the inside into a corner you just wouldn't overtake, because you'll completely ruin your race. So on board with the Red Bull driver. 6 tenths now away from Flexi. Good opportunity for a move down into turn 1. At the final corner, both of them using all of the curve and a little bit more. Flexi again, good top end speed, good exit out the final corner as well. Rinky Marie just moving off the racing line a little bit, just making that Red Bull loom large in the Force India's rear mirrors, just letting Flexi know I'm still here, I'm still behind you, don't forget about me, I want that 2nd place. And for DRS again, just closing up into the entrance for turn 2. And now for the rest of the lap, unfortunately he's got to pretty much play follow the leader. Nigel and Wazzy going into battle over 9th and 10th further back, but I don't really want to take my eye off this battle here, because I've got a feeling that Rinky Marie, and another 3-second time penalty for the Red Bull driver. I know Flexi has penalties. Fernand I don't think has anything. I don't think our race leader has any penalties. I know some people like to religiously check the race director to see how many penalties these guys have. I don't. I like to leave it for a surprise at the very end of the race, and sometimes you really do see a change inside the top 10. I know Flexi has penalties. I know Rinky Marie definitely has penalties. It's Konzo and Dougie Antonio. So Konzo's managed to get past Dougie Antonio somewhere, and I think the tyres on that McLaren may be starting to cry enough. 15 laps completed, and he's still got another 11 to go. Flexi as well, 11 laps completed on them medium tyres. So possibly now the medium tyres slowly starting to cry a bit. The McLaren guys down in 6th and 7th. Williams running in 4th and 5th. But the main battle at the moment is Rinky Marie. Fernand hasn't managed to pull away too much from Flexi. The gap is still around the 2-second mark, and it hasn't really fluctuated much at all this race. And Rinky Marie now as close as he's been so far. Lap 26 of 35, 10 to go, including the one these guys are currently working on. The Red Bull driver needs to try and force Flexi into a mistake. He needs to be closer than this. Again, Flexi just gets a great exit out of some of these corners. Really put the power down. This Aero Specialist makes his second pit stop from a lowly 14th place and picks up another 5-second stop-go penalty for speeding in the pit lane. It's been a real baptism of fire for the reserve driver. The other reserve driver of Cohen, now down in 12th place, so his initial promise of being inside the top 10 has faded away somewhat. As for the other soft runners, well, the only two out there at the moment, not including Aero, who's just made a pit stop onto them, is both the Mercedes drivers, Nigel in 9th, Harrin in 11th place, and Harrin just a second and a half away from Wazzy as well. So a possibility of both Mercedes drivers scoring a handful of points here. But the main driver on these soft tyres is this man here, Rinky Marie in 3rd. Again, closing right up to Flexi in Sector 2 and Sector 3. But Flexi again will have a great exit out of the final corner. He's run wide a little bit over the curb there, and this is Rinky Marie's best opportunity on board of the Red Bull driver now. This is the closest he's been so far. Flexi sticks in the middle of a circle. Oh, possible little bit of contact there between them, but Rinky Marie has the inside line. He might try and squeeze the Force India driver out a little bit. He'll have DRS as well, but he's on the outside for turn 2. Flexi will be liking that. He can defend the inside into the middle of a circuit, possibly squeezing the Red Bull driver out, but Rinky is still there up the inside into 3, squeezing Flexi out and pushing him over the curb a little bit, and that's Rinky Marie now up into 2nd place. Nigel picks up a 3-second time penalty, but Rinky Marie has done what he's wanted to do. He needed to complete that move as soon as possible. He's done it. He's now up into 2nd place, and he's just 2 seconds away from Funard, who's looked very comfortable all race. And Rinky Marie can sniff an ILR victory here tonight at Hungary. Got yellow flags for something in Sector 3. A handful of 3-second time penalties coming in. Someone else, I think Dougie Antonio possibly picked up one. Cohen definitely has just picked up one. And we've got more yellow flags in Sector 3. McGee Showman, Paul McGuinness. No, it's not them. Is it Aero Specialist? Not too sure who it is, to be honest. We've got yellow flags flopping up all over the place. McGee Showman and Paul McGuinness battling hard over 14th and 15th. Here's Fernando at the final corner. Rinky Marie has already brought that gap down to 1.7. Flexi still hanging on for now. I think it'll only be a matter of time before Rinky Marie breaks that DRS second and starts to pull away and close up on Fernand. Tough Handle still running strong in 4th, and I think he's going to be pretty much settled now for 4th place. Gonzo, his teammate, backing him up well in 5th. With Dougie Antonio is just a second back from the McLaren driver. We have Spaghetti Chips and Larkin going into battle here. So Spaghetti Chips isn't safe in the 7th place. Indeed, Larkin has managed to retake that position back up into 7th place, pushing Spaghetti Chips down to 8th. And he's got to be careful because Nigel, Wazzy and Harrin are all very close behind as well, and Cohen in 12th. So these guys 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th, all very close together. He's going to get feisty into his last few laps then as they all scrap about to try and score a handful of points here tonight. But Larkin very strong. He's been consistently inside the top 10 in both qualifying and the race. Spaghetti Chips, he's now 13 laps completed on their medium tyres. Look at that, they all just fly through the chicane. A cascade of orange and silvers and whites and reds. And they're as close as you can. No overtaking can be done around this point of a circuit though. And Spaghetti Chips, I feel, was struggling a little bit on those medium tyres, which is surprising. They've only completed 13 laps. The likes of his teammate Dougie have done 18. Larkin ahead, who's just got past him, has got 1 lap extra, 14 laps completed. But he's got Nigel behind him on a set of soft tyres. Harrin as well, a couple of places back, also on the soft tyres. So these guys fighting very aggressively. Over 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and in the background there, Cohen in 12th has closed up. So is Nigel going to think about moving to turn 1? He is ducking out the rear wing of the McLaren driver. A little bit of wheel rub there, no harm, no foul. But again, Nigel finds himself on the outside for turn 2, but Spaghetti Chips has already lost the position. Look at that. So, oh, and in the background, Wazzy almost creamed into the back of the McLaren driver and had to take avoiding action. So Spaghetti Chips ducked back behind Nigel and halfway down into turn 2. He'd already lost the position. So yeah, Spaghetti Chips definitely struggling for pace towards the end of this race, and he's got Wazzy now behind him in 10th place, Harrin in 11th, Cohen in 12th, so the McLaren driver is in danger of not scoring points here if he keeps falling down the order. Beyond that, Owen on his own in 13th. Meanwhile, Paul McGuinness and McGee showing a spirited battle over 14th and 15th, well, it gives him something to focus on for the last few laps. The other specialist, and of course the disconnected Lukey Luke a long way back. But here we are then on board with Fernand, looking back at the Red Bull of Rinky Marie. Lap 30 of 35, 6 to go. The gap is now under a second. You can see the letterbox opening on that Red Bull's rear wing. And this is it then. Fernand, who's had it pretty easy so far this race, controlling the pace at the front. Just a couple of seconds ahead of whoever has been holding on to second place. Has now suddenly realised, hold on a minute, I've got someone that's actually starting to catch me now. And he's on tyres but haven't completed as many laps. And he's on the quicker compound as well. Airway specialist Fernand's teammate has called it a day down in 16th place. Just saw him there to the side of the track. Not too sure if he's crashed or if he's just pulled off to the side. Yellow flags and now green flags as well. So Fernand leads. Halfway round lap 30 of 35. Winky Marie 7/10 back. And he needs to try and stay out of the dirty air coming through this section of the course, because it won't really help your front downforce or your tyres. And at this point now you really need to start pushing. Braking late for the final couple of corners and trying to close up an extra tenth or two. He will have the DRS. But at this distance I don't think he'll be close enough. He might try a bit of a do or die attempt. What's the exit like for both drivers? Maybe similar. Fernand maybe just slightly better. But now the speed rises for the Red Bull driver with that DRS. Closing all the time. Just ducking out a little bit like he did to Flexi a few laps ago. Just letting Fernand know that he's there. Both these two have dropped. Flexi, he's 2.7 seconds back. In fact, everyone else behind already down to that big old train battle for 7th. We're all separated by a few seconds. So at the front of the field, this is the only battle that we have so far. And how's it going to go? What's the prediction? Answers in the postcards. Meanwhile, Harin and Wazzy fighting over 10th and 11th. And the final point so far goes to the Mercedes driver. Spaghetti Chip still holding on to 9th at the moment, but he is dropping a couple of tenths a lap to Nigel and Larkin ahead. Cohen has also dropped back a little bit in 12th, and Wazzy picks up a 3-second time penalty. So I think there will be changes with the final classification at the end. And Wazzy's lost the back end of the car, and poor old Cohen has come around that corner with absolutely nowhere to go and creamed into the back of the Sauber. And Cohen, they're just moving out the way, allowing Wazzy to retake that position. But unfortunately for Cohen, his race is pretty much now over. Meanwhile, Spaghetti Chips and Nigel going into battle. Well, Nigel bit out of shape there. He's going to have to defend the inside from his teammate. In fact, Hammond has just danced around the outside. So it's all kicking off here at the back end of the top 10. Spaghetti Chips holding on to the 8th place. And now Nigel has made a mistake and fallen down to 10th. But it's not as bad a mistake as Wazzy, who's sideways out of the right-hander coming into the chicane. And Cohen just had nowhere to go, unfortunately. He will carry on round. He's got nothing to gain or lose by staying out or pitting. It's a shame for the Ferrari driver, because he had an opportunity for a point or two. We are back up to the race leaders. Fernand just still 6 tenths ahead of Rinky Marie. 4 laps to go into the chicane. Both of them clipping the apexes very nicely. There's Flexi in 3rd place, 3 seconds back now. We'll be hoping and praying that these guys pick up a handful of time penalties or take each other out. As it stands, he's looking nailed on for 3rd place. Tough to handle. Safe in 4th. Conzo safe in 5th. Doug Antonio safe in 6th. And I reckon Larkin is pretty much safe and secured in 7th place as well. The Keith Showman and Paul McGinn is still fighting over that 14th and 15th place. The only car behind him is Lukey Luke, who's I think he's back in his car now, because he's now on the ultra soft tyres. His car hasn't ghosted anymore, so Lukey Luke is still carrying on. Larkin picks up a 3-second time penalty. That might go against him at the end of this race, because he's running in 7th. Meanwhile, Fernand still holding on to his race lead. 3 laps to go. And Rinky Marie running out of time to get that Red Bull on the top step of the podium. What has Rinky Marie got to do? Well, I think Fernand has driven a very, very controlled race. A lot of promise to this driver. He's yet to really have a strong showing so far. Came in as a reserve driver several races ago. And this is going to be his moment in the sun if he can hold off Rinky Marie. Both of these guys desperately needed a result like this. Rinky Marie, of course, being here since the start of the season, has had a poor season by his or by anyone's standards, really. The first handful of races, he spent most of it crashing into things or other people rather than actually finishing races and scoring points. But here tonight, even if he doesn't win this race, I think he's going to be absolutely overjoyed with the second place. And Fernand as well be picking up his first win and points in ILR3 after a struggling but still fairly competitive start to his season in ILR3, joining of course halfway through as a reserve driver. Flexi in third. I think he'll be relatively happy with his performance as well. Nothing he can do about the top two. As for the others, well, I think Tough to Handle will be fairly confident with fourth place. He hasn't really been at the races today. Konzo as well in fifth. Very quiet race from both the Williams drivers, but they've kept it clean and consistent and will score good points for the team's championship at least. Dougie Antonio in sixth has made a good recovery through the field after qualifying quite down the order. Larkin as well as being ever present inside the top 10 throughout qualifying and the race, and it'd be a good confidence boosting result for that Ferrari driver. Spaghetti Chips, again, a good recovery from him from the back of the field after retiring early on in qualifying. But again, a circuit like Hungary doesn't really possess a lot of overtaking opportunities, and I think 8th is the best he can do. Both the Mercedes drivers as well can usually be found floating around the edge of the top 10, and both of them inside the top 10 at the moment in 9th and 10th. Both running, of course, similar strategy, but different to a lot of other people. As for everyone else, well, Wazzy has been in the wars recently. He's down in 11th place. Owen Wyatt really has had a poor race by his standards in 12th. Cohen, unfortunately, looked like he had an opportunity to score a point or two towards the end of this race, but unfortunately was in the wrong place at the wrong time and hit the back of Wazzy after he spun a couple of laps ago. McGee Showman, Paul McGuinness, very off the pace tonight for whatever reason, and Lukey Luke, of course, disconnected for the majority of this race. Aero Specialist, EFC Matthew, EVR Matt and Zenki all retired several laps ago. Zenki, I think, was the only one that legit retired through a crash. The other three, I think, just had enough, threw in the towel at various points. So into the final lap then. I think Rinky Marie's soft tyres have now pretty much given up. He's a second and a half away from Fernand now. Oh, and Fernand's run wide. Fernand's off the circuit on the exit of turn 2. Oh, what an unbelievable twist that is into the tail here. Lap 35, the final lap, and Rinky Marie has just seen Fernand fall off the circuit. Is that Toro Rosso driver okay? I think he is. No, he's not. He's off the circuit again. Has he got a puncture? Has something gone wrong with that Toro Rosso car? Because he's now down into third place, and Fernand, for 34 and a half laps of this race, has driven it near perfectly. Something I think is wrong with that Toro Rosso car, because he's losing time, and now Tough to Handle can sniff a podium here, but Rinky Marie has been given an absolute gift here, and he's going to win this race unless penalties change it. Flexi as well won't believe his eyes seeing Fernand run off the circuit. I think Fernand has managed to calm down now and consolidate third place, but Rinky Marie coming through the final corner. This isn't set in stone. These guys have penalties, and I can't remember how much, but for now Rinky Marie exits the final corner. He crosses the line. Does he hold on to the race win? Here comes Flexi. Flexi in second place. Fernand jumps Flexi but doesn't jump Rinky Marie. And Fernand's mistake at turn 2 has gifted the race win to the Red Bull driver. Tough to Handle has been promoted into third. Konzo in fourth. Flexi pushed all the way down to fifth. Dougie Antonio classified in sixth. Seventh does go to, it goes to Spaghetti Chips then. So Harin classified in eighth. Larkin ninth. Nigel in 10th. Wazzy a long way back. So that is your top 10. And Fernand, after bigging him up all race, he drove a perfect race, controlling the front of the field. Throws it all away at turn 2 on the final lap to give Rinky Marie his first win of the season in ILR3. Tough to Handle as well, by dint of having less penalties, picks up the final podium spot. Konzo in fourth, and Flexi, who crossed the line in second, classified in fifth. Dougie Antonio and Spaghetti Chip 6th and 7th. Harin 8th. Larkin 9th. And Nigel picks up the final point. Both the Saubers 11th and 12th. Cohen in 13th. McGee Showman in 14th, just ahead of Paul McGuinness. And Lukey Luke, the final driver across the line. So there we go, then on the top step of the podium. It is a surprise, it is a shock, but I feel it is deserved. Rinky Marie then takes down the race win, and it's 25 points for himself to kickstart his season finally after the Christmas and New Year break. And the Toro Rosso driver, Fernand, will be bitterly disappointed with second. And Tough to Handle picks up an unlikely third place after penalties, but he'll still be happy to extend his championship lead. So there we go then, Rinky Marie. He did have 3 seconds worth of penalties, but Fernand's mistake pushed him so far back that he couldn't retake the top step of the podium. Tough to Handle kept it clean to be classified in third place. Same for Konza as well. Both these drivers usually don't pick up penalties. The top 4 then at the end separated by only 3 seconds. Flexi in 5th place, of course, had penalties. Having a bit of a gap back to the McLaren drivers of Dougie Antonio and Spaghetti Chips. Harrin, Larkin and Nigel complete the top 10. Then we have Wazzy and Owen Wyatt, 11th and 12th for Sauber, ahead of Cohen, McGee Showman, Paul McGuinness and Lukey Luke, who finished 1 lap down. We lost Aero Specialist, EFC Matthew, EVR Matt and Zenki. So I'll get the top 3 in for a quick podium interview. Hi guys, give us a minute, yeah? Alright, well, unfortunately, for whatever reason, Fernand has yet to join the podium interviews, but I do have Rinky Marie and Tough to Handle with me, so if Fernand does join, we'll talk to him at some point. Guys, could you, before I start with the questions, can you just make sure that you've allowed your voice to be shared in the party settings so we don't get any awkward silences? I'll give you a couple of seconds just to double check before I start.
Yeah, my is allowed.
Okay then, Rinky Marie then. So, a different strategy to the rest of the field, starting on the medium tyres, going on to the softs, getting past Flexi with a handful of laps to go. Trying your very best to close the gap to Fernand, and then I think in the last couple of laps, I think your soft tyres just went off a little bit. And then lo and behold, coming through turn 2 on the final lap, you saw Fernand's Toro Rosso off into the grass. You took the lead, a very surprising turn of events on the final lap, but you must be delighted to pick up your first win in ILR, and also pick up your first real strong result of the season, because up to this point it has been a bit of a struggle for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has been a dreadful season so far, but I'm very happy to finally get some sort of result, and that's it. A win right away is very good, of course, so I'm very happy.
I mean, just talk to us about your strategy going into this race. Of course, with the wet qualifying, it enabled all the drivers from pole all the way down to 20th to choose whatever tyres they wanted to start the race on. A majority went for the soft tyres, then going on to the mediums. You went mediums onto softs. Was that a gamble, or was that the sort of strategy that you was planning on running when you noticed that qualifying was wet and the race was dry? Or was it more depending on where you was going to qualify, in relation to whatever setup you were going to run and tyre strategy in the race?
Well, if I have the choice, if I starting outside top 10 or so, I prefer starting on the medium tire. So if you in the first laps get hauled up a bit. If you are on medium tires, you're less affected by it. So it gains you time on other players. So it was a deliberate call for me, and it resulted in a good in a win. So very happy.
Yeah, just let's talk about the first part of your season. Obviously, all of you guys, including yourself, have been, rested for the last few weeks with Christmas and New Year, and a lot of guys have been able to go away and reevaluate and refocus on how their season is going. What went wrong in the first part of the season? Because your teammate Zenki had a string of third place finishes and was running in the top 3 in the championship, and there you are towards the bottom on just a handful of points. Was it something that you was doing wrong, or was it the case of you was just getting caught up in other people's accidents? Because more often than not, we saw you at times, crashing with other cars or hitting the wall. It must have been very frustrating because you couldn't really get a consistent run of strong results going until tonight.
No, it was. I made some few mistakes. Some others made few mistakes, and it kept happening. And even if I had a good race, I was compromised with safety car or something. So, like in Germany. I had some very bad luck this season, and it's good to be back on the podium.
Yeah, and with the next few races coming up, the likes of Belgium and Italy as well, with very fast circuits coming up. Are you looking forward to these challenges, or is there a few circuits coming up that you're sort of thinking, if I just finish and pick up a few points, I'll be happy? The second half of the season is really make or break for a lot of drivers. Are you feeling confident, or are you going to have to go away and work at time trial and Grand Prix mode to really work out the kind of setups you're going to need for the next few races to keep a result like this going?
Yeah, I quite like the slow circuits. I'm good at like Monaco, Singapore, and Hungary as well today. So, well, maybe a bit of struggle, but anything can happen. So, I look forward to the next few races.
Well, after challenging your way all the way through the field in a different strategy, nothing you could really do but Fernando controlled the race, but you had to be in the right place at the right time in case he made a mistake, which he did in the final lap. You got past him and took the race win. So congratulations on the race win and the 25 points.
Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, Fernando's not here, so I can't ask him any questions. So we'll move on to our championship leader, Tough to Handle, who has been gifted the third place at the end with Flexi picking up too many time penalties. Tough, you weren't really at the races today, were you, really? You were sort of languishing sort of outside 4th, 5th as the race went on. There was nothing you could really do about Flexi and Fernando ahead, and obviously with Rinky Marie on the alternate strategy as well. Do you count yourself a little lucky to be in third place? Because you were struggling a little bit in mid-race. You're setting consistent lap times, but not really finding those extra few attempts to be challenging for the race win tonight.
Well, first of all, Happy New Year to everybody and Merry Christmas. No, I don't consider myself lucky. It's a matter of consistency and taking care of yourself and not taking much of a risk. I knew my direct competition is way behind, and for some reason Zenki had a bad quali. Then he didn't finish the race for some reason also. So. I didn't wish to take any risks. I think you saw us in the first couple of laps. We were like 1 second before the first 4 of us, within 1 or 2 seconds. I tried to do like a late lunge or something, but I didn't see it worth it because Rinky, congrats to him on the win. Isn't in contention with me in the championship, so that's what I'm looking at. But no, I don't consider myself lucky. I'm sorry for Flexi for the penalties, but hey, I drove a clean race, so I think I deserve it.
Yeah, as I've said before, in ILR and other leagues as well, consistency is key. You don't have to win every race. You don't have to finish in a podium in every race. The last few races have been sort of up and down for you. A podium in Germany, finishing outside the points in Silverstone. You had a 6th for the 5th and a 7th as well. So is it a case now of, as we move into the second half of the season, the real target for you is not necessarily race wins and podiums, it's just outscoring the likes of Spaghetti Chips, Flexi, Zenki, Konzo as well, your teammate, and And if you know, because you know that if you outscore them on a regular basis, you're only going to be extending your championship lead. Are you already thinking about the title? Or is it still just a bit too early to be thinking about, you know, maybe I can have this wrapped up by, I don't know, Japan or USA, for example?
No, it's still a long way to go. I'm taking each weekend separately, practicing, brainstorming with my teammate. What should we do? Setups and stuff like that. The championship is a long way ahead. It's not in my head. Of course, I'm aiming at it, but I'm also aiming at the constructors with my teammates. So at one time in the race, I saw him catching me like half a second a lap, and I knew Flexi had a couple of penalties. So I thought of, if he caught me, I won't fight him. I'll let him by. That will help us in the constructors. So I'm trying to focus on each weekend, maximizing the points for both, for myself and for the team, and helping my teammate also.
Well, certainly the result for yourself and Konzo third and fourth obviously extends your lead in the Drivers' Championship, and of course extends your lead, the team's lead in the Constructors as well. So if you're focusing on both championships, result tonight for yourself and your teammate is a very good step in the right direction. But congratulations on the third place, and hopefully I'll be able to speak to you again as the rest of the season goes on.
I hope so. Congrats to Rinke on his first win. So I'm so happy for him. Yeah, I did a mistake. I thought I was telling him before we jumped into the interview. I did a mistake. I'm not sure if you got on the stream. I did a mistake going into the last corner. Lost like a couple of tenths, so he barely went out of the pits in front of me.
Yeah. I was very surprised that came in front of you, out of the pits.
Yeah, I know. But hey, it's a good result. Off to Spa.
Yeah.
Off to Spa indeed, and hopefully we see some more close racing there as well. But thank you for joining for the podium interviews. Thank you very much indeed. That therefore brings the podium interviews and the live stream to an end. Nice to be back commentating and watching these guys pound round these fantastic circuits, and hopefully we'll see more of the same close and exciting racing as the rest of the season goes on. My name of course has been Alex Lilliart. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you all at the same time, same place next week.